Aztek Paddles is a San Diego company that we formed to try to push this carbon fiber technology into the stand-up world. And we gathered up some guys from the golf industry that know a lot about making carbon fiber products and applied it to a relatively simple problem, which is stand-up paddling. It turned out to be a lot more complicated than we thought going into it, but it's still, compared to what they've done in the past, these are easy problems for them to solve, which was exciting to me because I had a bunch of things I wanted to push as far as new technologies, and they were like, yeah, that's easy, we can do that. But Aztek Paddles in general, it's a carbon fiber, it's a paddle company within a carbon fiber company. So they do a lot of different projects, baseball bats, paddles, tennis rackets, bikes, and they decided as one of their first projects to go after stand-up paddles. And so we wanted to be innovative in a lot of different ways. We wanted to push the envelope as far as new design ideas, new flex patterns, blade shapes, handle shapes, and just bring technology to the market with the idea of this biocompatibility, because I'm a doctor, and so that's what I think about, like how does it interface with the paddler, and there's a lot of tricky things about that you can improve upon that hadn't really been pushed in the market before. So that's what was exciting for me. I've done a lot of other biologic applications and surgery and stuff like that, and this was something I love to do, and so it was just everything I knew about, but now something that I was really passionate about. So blisters amount to force per unit area. When you have a collection of force at one spot, then the skin shears and you get blisters. So if you can distribute that force out over a greater surface area, it gives you more control and less high force areas, so you get less blistering. So the idea, if you can anatomically fit something into your palm that works with your palm, then you'll just have a more comfortable interface with the paddle. And when you're paddling, 500 strokes a mile, that's a lot of interface, and the more control and contact and comfort you have there, then the more output you can produce. So
that was, yeah. And then, so you guys was the small one your hand, the medium, and then large?
Well, actually, that's funny. Mine is an extra large because I have the biggest hands in the world. So we had to take my mold and then size it down anatomically to different shapes. So we had a woman and we had a child and we had other guys with different size hands, and then we kind of just detuned it. But we took the same kind of contours, which work with a lot of different people, but we just sized it down for different hand sizes.
Right.
A unique part of our design is the fit, and so we had to design an interface on the website that allowed people that didn't know a lot about paddling to get the right paddle in their hands. And so all the questions are designed to match the flex, the handle size, the blade size to the person, the type of board they have, and the type of paddling they're doing. And it's vastly different, and so that's why we came up. And then I made anybody who got a free paddle from us initially, I made them go through the design process and see what it spit out, and then we gave them that paddle and we said, how does that work? Is the program giving us something that works for you? And then we tweaked it to, because we were just doing this on the fly, but then as we worked the system a few times, we were able to kind of tweak the numbers to where it was producing the right kind of paddles. And obviously it doesn't work every time, and sometimes we have to nudge it one way or the other, but it allows us to get the right flex, the right blade size to someone who doesn't know anything about paddling. And that's why we had to ask certain questions to get that. And it's still in process. We're still kind of trying to improve that because nobody's ever done that before, and we look forward to kind of expanding that capability.
Yeah.
So the paddle flex is kind of what differentiates us from everybody, and that's what's unique about us. And I think that's what will get people on our paddles and stay on our paddles once they try them. But the thinking here is that um, a uniform flex to a paddle isn't necessarily the best thing for efficiency and injury prevention and power output. And the kind of the way the paddle industry was going is that it was lighter and stiffer is better and better. And you know, and I just had some issues with that because of all the shoulder injuries we were seeing and shoulder overuse injuries, elbow things, and you know, I see a lot of that because all my buddies that get them come to me because that's what I do. And so I started thinking, you know, why is it stiffer necessarily better? I mean, you know, there's nothing that is a human interface that is hard, stiff thing. I mean, you don't have a stiff pillow. You don't, you know, you don't. So let's think about this for a second. And so we started thinking about what's the negative of having a big flex? Well, the negative is that you lose control of the blade. You know, it's whippy, and then you don't feel like you have control of the blade when it's in the water, when it's too noodly, you know, like a fiberglass blade. So you can't go too, and rotationally wise, you need it to be very stiff, because if the blade is in the water and it kind of torques on you, that's not good. But when you apply the power to it, to have some little give so that your shoulder doesn't just hit a wall every time it's pushing on this blade, that's biologic. That's a human interface, and that's going to be an improvement. And so we were trying to figure out like where to put this flex. And these guys, you know, in the golf club industry, perfecting exactly where the kick point on a golf club is has been done for years, and there's tons of science about that. And that has never been applied to the stand-up industry, you know. And so they were like, that's easy. We do this all the time. I mean, where do you want to put the kick point? I'm like, kick point? What's that? And you know, and so we were thinking about, do we want to put it on the bottom? If you put the flex on the bottom, then you're going to lose that feel of the water. You know, you put your blade and you twist, and it's just like, and you don't feel like you have a hold on the water. You want to feel like your hand is in the water. And so by putting it at the top, you give yourself that give, but you keep the control in the water. So it's kind of like, you know, you get the flex, but you don't get the noodle or the lack of control. And that was kind of why that was designed. And then the whole idea of the flex is that I kind of think of it as a hybrid, okay? So when you go to put the power on the paddle, at the very beginning of your stroke, the first 30% is where you have the most leverage and where you have the most ability to put power on. Well, the blade only has a certain amount of bite that it can withstand, and then it's going to give in the water, right? It's going to drag, it's going to cavitate, and that's just wasted effort. Because if you give, say, 2 inches, if your paddle goes in the water, you're supposed to paddle so the paddle goes in the water, sticks like in mud, and then you launch your board over that, right? So if your paddle drags in the water, say 2 inches over a 6-mile race, that's like 300 yards of distance that you've wasted just in cavitation, you know, and so you want to kind of minimize that. And so if you design a flex so that your blade goes in and you apply the power, and instead of giving, the shaft bends a little bit, and then that's stored energy in your shaft. So then as your paddle comes back towards your hip, where you don't have a lot of power, then that unwinds, it unsnaps, gives you that energy back into the water, and then you have a more sustained distribution of power through your stroke, right? And then your stroke becomes more powerful, right? And then it also gives you a kick to get the blade out of the water, because the kick is coming back, and then you can get the blade back in the water. It goes back into its stiff pattern, and then, you know, then you do it again. It's like this little spring, and you load the spring, it unloads. You load the spring, it unloads. And you can kind of get in a groove and use body weight and the way you apply your stroke to maximize that. And it's just easier on your shoulder. I mean, if you paddle a big blade with a stiff shaft, in a mile or two, unless you have giant shoulders, your shoulders are just cooked, and then you just can't keep hitting it, you know. And then so then guys were going with a lot smaller blades. If you look at the history of the paddles, at first everybody's going 120s, 115s, these giant blades, you know, and then the shafts got super stiff, and then people couldn't handle it. They were getting shoulder injuries, they were getting cooked on long races, so then they started going smaller and smaller blades. Well, if you go with our shaft, with this flexi shaft, you can tolerate a bigger blade, right? Because then it's an easier interface and you're not hitting the wall every time. So now all of a sudden you're able to go with a little bit bigger blade, which gives you more bite, which gives you more power and more speed. So that's kind of how we evolved. And it's really the easiest way to feel this. It's kind of a hard thing to feel for most paddlers that aren't in tune with this. But if you take a stiff shaft and then paddle our shaft, and then go back to your stiff shaft, it'll be apparent. You're just like, this thing feels like a rock. Like it's stiff, it's dead, and it's not kind of lively. Whereas ours just kind of jumps out of the water because of that flex. You put the flex on and it just jumps out and then it goes back in. And I'm completely addicted to it. I can't paddle. I switch around with people all the time because they'll see me paddling. Oh, let me try you. And I switch with theirs and it's just like, ugh. I really... and maybe it's just because I'm a little biased, but I'm really advancement because in golf club industries, switching out heads or making those adjustable is something they've done for years in very intricate ways with a lot smaller pieces. So for us to do a trade blade for the engineers here was another easier problem to solve. And so the idea there is that it's, I had 4 or 5 paddles in my car rattling around and for different conditions, and that's a high cost. It's hard to travel with them, and so if you could simplify that whole situation for cost reasons, for travel reasons, for storage, transportation, all that, it would be ideal. And the idea is, surf blade is a different shape. It's made to be a little bit more maneuverable. You're turning around a lot, you're sprinting a lot, you're massaging the water, whereas a race blade more just for bite and unidirectional travel. So you have different blade sizes and also body size. I mean, my children, my daughters, my wife, they all want different size blades, and I don't want to buy 5 different paddles, so I could buy 4 or 5 different blades, and then everybody's got a paddle, And then the other thing that's super important is just shaft length and having different shafts for different conditions. And so to be able to swap things, and then you can have a quiver of paddles with 2 blades and 2 shafts versus just 2 paddles, because you can mix and match and everything. And so, yeah, my race board's that much taller than my surfboard. It's a longer shaft. I don't want to race on my surf blade or my surf shaft, so we kind of swap things in and out. Windy conditions, I might use my surf shaft with my race blade, if it's a windy race or something like that, or downwind, I'm going to want the bigger blade. So it just, it helps make it more convenient. It's super convenient to travel. If you fly, to take your paddle as a checked thing is a hassle. To try to put your paddle in a board bag is always a recipe for a dent on your board. But if you could I just slide my shafts in the rails, and it's like a rail protector, and then my blades come with me in my luggage, and it makes travel a lot easier also.